Right, today we're going to study chapter 7a of SD 45 or SD 45.7a. It's the very well-known Sela Sutta, the discourse on Sela. So it's a layman, and this sutta, or parts of it, are found in a number of places in the ancient Buddhist texts. In fact, this sutta appears twice, once in the Majjhima Nikaya, M92, and also appears in the Samyutta Nikaya, 3.7, chapter 3, sutta 7. And the verses are also found in the Theragatha, called the Sela Theragatha. Actually, this sutta, this discourse, is a story about two friends. There is a bit of humor behind this story also, because Sela is this wonderful brahmin, and there is this other what is called matted hair ascetic. In other words, he keeps his hair uncut and long. Is a holy man. Actually, it's a part-time holy man, if you like. So we have this kind of situation even in the Buddha's time. Now, the reason why he's a part-time holy man is because he wants to protect his property so that he doesn't get taxed by the king. So he becomes a holy man in the daytime, and then he kind of goes back being dressed as a layperson in the evening, and he enjoys life with his family. So he goes on like that. So it's a very special group of religious people, if you like, in Buddha's time. We don't hear very much of them. In fact, there's only one other case mentioned. So the interesting thing here is he does have a devotee, and Sela is one of his devotees. So probably they're very good friends. So this is a bit of the background. So the interesting thing here is the other person's name, the matted hair ascetic's name is Keṇiya. So if you like, you can say this is a story of Sela and Keṇiya. So let us look at the story, the discourse, which the translation begins on just 65. Yeah? Right, so as usual, the Buddha is traveling somewhere in northern India. And thus have I heard, at one time the Blessed One was traveling by stages in Anguttara with a large community of monks, numbering 1,250. Again here, in the ancient literature of India, numbers are not too exact, especially big numbers. They kind of give us an idea. It's very big. Of course, 1,250 is not really, it's big, but not, it's bigger than 500. Usually the Buddha will go around with 500 monks, but here 1,250 is definitely much more than 500, so it's a big crowd. What does the number signify? It means here the Buddha's following has grown quite big because the Buddha has become better known, so he has more followers. And what's interesting here also is the name of the village, or name of the town rather. The next line says, in due course they arrive at the market town of the Anguttarapas named Apana. So these Anguttarapas, they are a tribe of people. So those days the countries are all named after the tribes of people. So here the town is called Apana. And notice here it is said to be a market town. A market town is a little, it begins with a small little village, usually at crossroads where travelers would stop for a while to maybe get food or something. So people will come there to sell their wares, and then slowly the little spread selling things become stalls and becomes houses and villages and so on. So it's called a market town. And Apana, here it means a market. Right? So if we can understand, probably originally it just meant market, but then the name got stuck, if you like. So we have an idea here in the Buddha's time that the economy was growing and there were a lot of people, and many of them, of course, were supporting the Buddha. So here, on the next page, now the method ascetic Keṇiya heard. It is said that the recluse Master Gotama, a Sakya son, who has gone forth from the Sakya clan, walking on a Dharma tour in Anguttarapa with a large community of monks, numbering 1,250, has arrived in Apana. So here was a stop passage saying that, okay, this part-time ascetic or holy man, Keṇiya, he hears the Buddha has arrived in town. So there's a part of him which is religious, a part of him which is worldly. So the part of him that is religious says, wow, okay, the Buddha is coming to town, so I must visit him, I must get to know him. Right? So then section 3 says, then the method ascetic Keṇiya approached the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. And when this courteous and friendly exchange was concluded, the method ascetic sat down at one side. So there's always this courtesy when someone meets a teacher like the Buddha. So then the Buddha, of course, being Buddha, gives him a talk on Dharma. I mean, they don't just have small talk and stop there. As a rule, the Buddha always teaches Dharma. Of course, the Buddha also does a bit of small talk, especially at the beginning when he meets someone. For example, when he visits the monks who are on retreat, the very first thing we'll ask the monk is, how are you getting along? Are you getting enough food on your alms round? How is your health? These basic things that we usually ask people. So it's not like a mechanical situation where all the Buddha does is just talk Dharma. So he does have this gentle human aspect, but of course the main idea is for him to teach the Dharma, so that those monks on retreat and the people who come to him would benefit from listening to the teaching that awoken him in the first place. Right, so after Keṇiya hears the Dharma, he's very happy. Right, so, and he's so happy, the next section says he invites the Buddha for a meal on the next day. In other words, early morning meal. Right, so this is where the Buddha wants to make sure that Keṇiya knows what he's saying. So the Buddha says, look at 3.4. When this was said, the Blessed One said this to the method ascetic: great indeed, Keṇiya, is the community of monks, 1,250 in number, and you are deeply devoted to the Brahmins. Okay, here again, there are two interesting things to note here. First of all, the Buddha is telling this person who just met him for the first time, Keṇiya, the part-time holy man, the Buddha tells him, you know, there are lots of monks here with me, it's 1,250, I'm sure you can serve them all. Number 2, Buddha says you are devoted to the Brahmins. In other words, he says that we're not Brahmins, you know. The Buddha wants to make sure. I said, we're not Brahmins, we're not of the priestly class. He didn't say we are Buddhists because the word Buddhist is not used those days. But he's saying that we are not Brahmins, okay? So he wants to make sure that Keṇiya knows what he's doing. And then Keṇiya says, although Master Gotama, the community of monks is large, numbering, what should be numbering, 1,250, and I am deeply devoted to the Brahmins, still may Master Gotama, along with the community of monks and so on, accept this invitation. Alright, so he acknowledges what the Buddha said. And then the Buddha wants to make sure, traditionally, there was this kind of situation will be mentioned 3 times. So up to the 3rd time, the Buddha says the same thing. In other words, the Buddha is saying, you are sure? Are you very sure? So it's a kind of social contract, it's a kind of tradition, a custom, which is, in other words, there's a clear arrangement here. Once you agree on the 3rd time, okay, we understand, there's a big group of monks here, and we're not Brahmins, and you're willing to make the offering. So Keṇiya says, yes, of course. So now, what does he do? He leaves the Buddha, he goes back to his ashram. Now, he has an ashram. He has a kind of ashram or asrama in Pali. Is a word which you can find some today used amongst some English-speaking people. The Malay word ashram also is used, but in Malay, the local language, ashram actually means a kind of like boarding school. So the old meaning of ashram, of course, is a community of people who have the same faith living together, and of course Keṇiya is the leader here. So he goes back to his ashram and he tells his kinsmen and blood relations and friends and companions, those people living with him, to get ready. He says, 4.3, second line says, "Listen to me, good kinsmen and blood relations, friends and companions. The recluse Gautama, along with his community of monks, has been invited by me for a meal tomorrow. Please help around with the menial tasks." So of course they all say yes. Then in next section 4.4, this is the part that describes what they did. Some dug ovens in the ground, others split wood, some washed bowls and vessels, others set the water pots, some laid out the seats. The matted hair ascetic himself prepared the circular pavilion. So this is kind of a temporary pavilion, like you see in Singapore when there's some fair coming or some kind of ritual. They will set up tents, or tentage as they call it. So here, similarly, Keṇiya sets up this circular pavilion for 1,250 monks, and that's quite a big number. So it was a busy night. So imagine here, he meets the Buddha, he goes home this evening, and usually they'll spend the whole night preparing this food, and then the next morning, once everything's ready, he will go and invite the Buddha. But we do have a bit more information here. So there's a kind of a break here. A new person is introduced. This is where Sela is introduced. There's a bit more information here about the brahmin Sela. Okay, so now in the section 5 onwards, we have what's called the Sela cycle. So this is the story about this another new person. He's the one who's he's a layman, but he's even more serious than Keṇiya. Now Keṇiya hears the Buddha teaching Dharma, he's very inspired, but all he does is he invites the Buddha home, say, "I will give you a meal." Okay? He's rich, of course, so he can afford it, because even that's why the Buddha said, I have 1,250 monks with me. Now there are other occasions where when the Buddha says such a thing, or even if the Buddha doesn't say the number of monks, the devotee will say, I would like to invite so many monks, 7 monks, 10 monks, or maybe more. So in this case, Keṇiya says, I can provide food for all of them, right? So in other words, he's a very rich, matted hair ascetic, okay? So that's his response to the Buddha. Now we're going to see his friend, his devotee Sela. And who is Sela? So the sutta introduces him here. Look at section 5. At that time, the brahmin Sela was living in Apana. So he also was kind of living in the neighborhood. And he's even more learned, if you like, than the method ascetic. Now what's interesting is that Sela is a brahmin, whereas the wanderer belongs to what's called the reform movement. So these two, they're actually on different sides, if you like. It's like in the West, it would be like the Catholics and the Protestants. The Sela would represent the Catholic Church, if you like, and then Keṇiya would be the Protestants. Kind of not a very good comparison, but it gives an idea how different they are. Because in Buddha's time, the Brahmins were trying to preserve the old ways, the old ideas of churching, religion, the other priests, and you got to go to them, and so on. Whereas the other group, the Reform movement, teaches that you practice on your own, you do your meditation. It is through your own actions that you'll be liberated. So you have these two movements. Okay, so and yet these two friends belong to two different sides, but they're good friends. So here, the Sutta narrator tells us that Sela was a master of the three Vedas. along with their invocations and rituals, phonology and etymology, Itihasa Puranas, as the fifth. He's learned in the Vedic padas are verses. And he's a grammarian, he's good in grammar and well versed in the Lokayata or nature law, the traditions of the culture, and a great man's marks, the 32 marks of a great man. Now this is a kind of stock passage showing that he's a very learned priest. And this also shows that this text, the sutta before us, is quite late in the Buddha's time, a little maybe in the second period, as we say, that is probably during the last 25 years of the Buddha's life. Because of all these great details, especially the marks of the great man. So the marks of the great man, there's a separate sutta called the Lakkhana Sutta, which talks about all the marks, which presents the Buddha as someone unique and kind of almost a superhuman kind of being. So these are later ideas which were kind of projected, superimposed onto the Buddha. We will find out a little more, a little later, how the marks of the great man will come into play. So here we have Sela. He's very learned in his faith. 5.3. He was instructing 300 Brahmin youth in the Vedic mantras. Here, of course, it would be the Rig Veda or the Vedas. So he has his own students, 300 of them. But obviously, it's a very open-minded Brahmin because he's a friend of the wanderer. We're not told how they're connected. So it's a very interesting kind of friendship. Section 6. At that time, the meditative ascetic Keṇiya was deeply devoted to the Brahmin Sela. So this Keṇiya also is kind of respects. Keṇiya respects Sela. Then the Brahmin Sela surrounded by 300 Brahmin youth. Brahmin youth, that means students, the young students. They start quite young to learn all these ancient Vedas. They were walking about, stretching their legs, approached the meditative ascetics' ashrams. So this is a very common practice where they kind of exercise themselves. It's ancient practice by the holy man. So as they do that, they were also walking towards they're going to visit Keṇiya's community, right? So here is where you see two groups of people that are going to meet. Keṇiya has met the Buddha, but Sela has not yet met the Buddha. He and his group are good friends with Keṇiya, so he's going to meet. They're going to meet. 7. Okay, so then Sela sees all this busy work going on in Keṇiya's ashram. So he asks Keṇiya, what's going on here? Okay, there's a question asked, is very interesting. 7.2, he asks, what now is Master Keṇiya receiving a groom or receiving a bride? In other words, is there a wedding going on? Okay. Here the ancient Indians have two words for wedding. We just say wedding, but in ancient India, I think even today they say, are you receiving a groom or are you receiving a bride? So they have two words for this. In other words, are you giving away your son or your daughter? Or preparing a great sacrifice? Or has he invited Bimbisara, the Raja of Magadha, and his army for a meal tomorrow? So there's a big festival. He says, what's going on here? And then Keṇiya says, no, Master Sela, none of this. But I've invited the Buddha. And then the narrator, of course, gives us a full list of quality of the Buddha. This is a traditional way of telling a story. This is an oral tradition. Okay? So Keṇiya repeats all the qualities of the Buddha. And what is important here is that the moment Keṇiya mentions the word Buddha, so I've invited the Buddha, Sela was simply enthralled. He was simply happy and inspired. Section 9, Sela says, did you say Buddha, sir? Can you imagine the first time he hears the word Buddha? Now he already has knowledge about a Buddha, a wise man, awakened one, and so on. But he never thought that there is one living in his own time. So the moment he hears the word Buddha, 3 times he asks Keṇiya, "Are you sure it's Buddha?" Keṇiya says, "Yes, I said Buddha, Sela." Now then, section 10, the Brahmin Sela says, "This sound Buddha is very difficult to be heard in the world." Now we may not really see the significance of this until we are really interested in Buddhism, and let's say you're living in some really remote area of the world where you really want to know about Buddhism, but you don't have a Buddhist center and no Buddhist teachers. Then one day someone says there is a Buddhist teacher giving teachings, and the moment you hear that, you will say, "Wow, are you sure you said there's a Buddhist teacher in town?" So you get excited. You say, "Yeah, that's wonderful, I want to listen to the Dharma." So in the case of Sela, the moment he hears the word Buddha, he says, "Oh, this is something I've been waiting for." But here, why is he so inspired when he hears the word Buddha? Because he has this great knowledge, according to the narrators here. He knows the 32 marks of the great man, and he knows the legend that the Buddha has all these 32 marks, different aspects of the body. For example, a certain height, long arms, and a long tongue, and so on. So the 32 altogether. So he's very curious to meet the Buddha and to see if he really was this man with the 32 marks. So he decides to join this gathering of his friend Keṇiya. Okay, so she asked him first, says, "Where is the Buddha now?" Right? And then Keṇiya says, if you look at the next page, 11.2, second line, "Where the cloud grey line of forest is." You got to imagine this a bit. Cloud grey line. So notice there's some distance. So all you can see in the distance is probably a flat land. In northern India, it's quite flat. There's a row of trees, probably the start of the forest, and he calls it a cloud grey line of forest of trees. So well, the Buddha is living in the forest. So Sela happily goes with his students to see the Buddha, and look what he says to his students. 12.2. Then the Brahmin Sela addressed the Brahmin youths. "Come quietly, sirs, placing foot after foot. For the Blessed One wants us a heart to approach, as lions living alone." So he knows the tradition of the Buddhists. They love peace. The Buddha he loves peace. It's a person who lives alone by himself, and they do not like noisy places. So he's showing this respect. As you want to meet the Buddha, you have to really be quiet. Approach him calmly. "So should I consult with the recluse Gautama says, please do not interrupt me while I'm in the midst of conversing. Wait, sirs, until the end of my conversation." So here is this very special instruction is given students. It says, while I'm talking, do not interrupt. Because there are cases where we do find a younger monk or someone else interrupting a conversation, and then kind of the teaching ends there. So here, Sela wants to be sure that this conversation is going to have with the Buddha will not be interrupted. He's very keen to find out, does the Buddha have all these 32 marks? What's the big deal here, you might ask? Well, if he has the 32 marks, so definitely the legend is that such a person, if he remained in the house as a householder, he would become a world monarch. In fact, this legend or this story of 32 marks, probably from my research, I think it goes back to the times of Alexander. So this story kind of sees Alexander as like a world monarch, so it's called these special marks. But if he leaves home, okay, this is the Indian version of it. If he leaves home, he becomes a world teacher. So either a world ruler or a world teacher. But here, with the Buddha, he has left the home. So if he has all the 32 marks, he is truly a really great, the greatest teacher, if you like, the world teacher. That is why Sela is so inspired. He's so excited to meet the Buddha. So he approaches the Buddha, and then he sees the Buddha. Section 15. Then this occurred to the Brahmin Sela, fully accomplished indeed, not otherwise. It's a recluse Gotama in the 32 marks of the great man. But I still do not know whether he is Buddha or not, right? So he's not sure. See? So that is why he wants to see him. Now I've heard it said amongst the Brahmins who are aged old teachers and teachers of teachers, saying, those who are arhats, fully self-awakened ones, will reveal themselves when their praises are being uttered. What now if I were to praise the Blessed One to his face with appropriate verses? This is not a Buddhist teaching, this is an ancient belief of the Brahmins themselves. So Sela is saying, I've heard some of my old teachers saying, if you really want to know what the Buddha teaches, or for that matter any guru you go to, you have to say nice things to him, right? So this is the quality of praise. Now what is interesting, rather beautifully coincidental, synchronic if you like, is these few days I've been writing, doing research about the word praise, because the Buddha is not a person who loves praises. If someone in the Mahā Sutta, for example, M36, after Mahā who is a Jain, debates with the Buddha, and he accepts the Buddha's instruction, is very impressed. So he tells the Buddha, wow, you're really a great teacher, and you have all these qualities. The Buddha tells him, Agivesana, he calls him by his family name, he says, you are being presumptuous, I mean, you are being personal and bold. So the Pali word here is asajja upaniya. Basically he's saying, I don't think you should praise me. So it's not really a rebuke, and yet it's not a compliment either. The Buddha is simply saying, are you sure you know what you're saying? So here is where it's a very interesting, just two little words, but it shows that the Buddha doesn't accept the praise given to him by Saccaka, because for the simple reason, Saccaka does not really know what he's saying, because Saccaka has not attained to the level of the Buddha, and he's saying, I think you're a great person. Of course, in our own time, we don't really discern or bother about such things. It's very much like, let's say, student A meets professor, this great scientist or someone who's really learned, and he has reached the height of his learning. And you've got this student, very new, who doesn't know everything, but he tells professor, I think you're really great, you're the best teacher in the world. Of course, in another sutta, one of the monks, Sariputta, actually said something very similar to this, to the Buddha. He tells the Buddha, you're the greatest teacher, you have all these wonderful qualities. Then the Buddha asks him, he says, Sariputta, you praise me, but have you met all the Buddhas of the past, and for that matter, the Buddhas of the future, and do you really know the present Buddha before you to say such a thing? So in other words, the Buddha wants people to really know what they're saying. When we praise others, what are we saying? When we praise people, we're actually saying we are better, I'm better than you. Okay? But Sariputta, of course, is an arahat, and his reply is different from those who are not arahats. So he tells the Buddha, I know this for a fact by the drift of the Dharma. Dhamma Anvaya. In other words, he says, if you're an arahat, you're awakened, I'm awakened, so we know each other. That much I can say. So here the Buddha accepts the praise, if you like. So here is a very interesting teaching which reminds us not to be carried away when people say good things to us. At the same time, we should not be saddened when people say nasty things to us, in other words, because the question is, are they qualified to do so? Do they really know us that well to say such things? So this is a very interesting reflection to reflect on. Okay, so here there's a long kind of a poem which this Sela sings, sort of recites, praising the Buddha. Let me just read the first line, give you an idea. The Pali goes like this: Paripuna kaya suruchi sujato charu dasano suwanno wanno si bhagava susukha datto si viriyawa. Fully complete is your body, radiant, well-formed, lovely to behold, golden in the Blessed One's, is the Blessed One's complexion of pure white teeth, heroic in effort. So he's interested in this ideal being, if you like. So all these verses give that kind of idea. Okay, and many of these verses, of course, also appear in the Sutta Nipāta. So you can read through them on your own. I won't go into them because these, as I said, these are praises which Sela gives the Buddha, hoping that the Buddha would reply to him, and he will know whether the Buddha is really Buddha or not. Okay. So here, before we end this first part, this is part one. Next we'll continue with the closing part with the Keṇiya cycle. That was the story of Keṇiya. So here he sees the Buddha, and is able to. He notices all the 32 as kind of marks of the Buddha, but only 2 he could not see because they're hidden. Of course, this is the very interesting part where the first one you could not see, of course, is the Buddha's private part. The other one is his long tongue. So here what the Buddha did was, according to the story, the Buddha projects to him psychically, so he's able to see in his mind to confirm that the Buddha has all the 32 marks complete. So he's very happy to know that finally he has met this person with all the 32 marks, this ideal being, this world teacher before him. And he's very impressed. So we will end this first part here for today, and then next week we finish off with part 2. Spend a short while to close this session with a short reflection. Moments like this we spend looking into the suttas to just calm ourselves and focus our minds so that we can receive some wisdom aspect of the teaching. In meditation, we build up some peaceful aspect of our personal training. So we got to balance the peaceful or calmness aspect with the insight or wisdom aspect. So they help each other in our meditation. They help each other in our progress as an individual. So studying the suttas help us with the vocabulary of the Buddha's teaching, the stories, and also instructions, what to do, what not to do, and something for us to reflect on. Reflecting in this way is wonderful good karma. With the power of such karma, may we be well and happy in this life itself. May we have the strength and wisdom to attain, to aspire towards at least stream winning in this life itself. In this moment of peace too, let us send out our loving kindness to all our teachers and to all our loved ones. May they be well and happy. And to all those seeking the Dharma, seeking the truth in life to be awakened. And also those who are still seeking for such truth, may they find it. And to all our friends and relatives, may they be well and happy. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.